15 years of loyalty traded for a printed termination slip. He even used my damn pen to sign it. They say the road teaches you patience. I used to believe that. 15 years of hauling freight through blizzards, tornado warnings, highway pileups, and the dead silence of 3 a.m. asphalt had taught me plenty: how to wait, how to listen, how to fix a busted axle with nothing but duct tape and a bent wrench. But nothing prepares you for betrayal. Not the kind that looks you in the eye, and doesn't even blink. It was just past 6 a.m. when I stepped into the glass box they call an office now. I hadn't slept in almost 2 days, 42 hours straight, hauling a load of replacement parts from Dallas to a factory in Detroit that was one screw away from shutting down. I made the delivery on time, like always. No one clapped. No one cared. Except the client. They sent a thank you note. I doubt it ever reached my file. Sterling Aero Freight used to be something else. When I started, it was just Gordon Jenkins, his son Travis, and 3 battered Peterbilts trying to compete with the big boys. No software. No suits. Just grit, grease, and a handshake. We built something from nothing. We earned the trust of over 200 clients, some of whom still sent me Christmas cards. And me? I never missed a delivery window. Not once. Then Stonebridge Holdings happened. They bought us out last year. Rolled in with their PowerPoints and city smiles. And along with them came Bryce Hammond, operations manager, 6 feet of polished arrogance wrapped in a tailored suit. The kind of man who treats a hard day's work like an abstract theory. MBA from somewhere fancy. Skin smoother than his spreadsheets. I could smell the cologne and the condescension before he even opened his mouth. I saw the writing on the wall early. He started asking cost-efficiency questions. Wanted to know why we let certain clients set flexible delivery times. Why we gave priority to small accounts like Phoenix Farms. He didn't get it. Didn't want to. He kept a whiteboard in his office with the word legacy underlined in red. Beneath it, salaries, benefits, names. Mine was circled twice. So I wasn't shocked when his assistant told me, "Mr. Hammond would like to see you." Immediately. I stepped into that fishbowl of an office, and there it was, my name at the top of a termination letter. Already printed. Already signed. Bryce didn't even look up right away. He was tapping at his tablet, pretending to be busy. When he finally spoke, it was with the tone of someone reading off a weather report. "We're restructuring, Mitchell," he said. "There's no room for emotional cost centers." I stood still. Not tired. Not mad. Just, still. "No room," I repeated. "It's not personal," he added, and for a moment, I could have sworn he smirked. And then it hit me. The pen in his hand. A black Mont Blanc with a silver trim. That was my pen. The one I gave to Gordon Jenkins 10 years ago when we landed the Western Distributing account. It had a small engraving near the clip, for the long haul. "Nice pen," I said, voice low. "Did Jenkins leave that behind?" He didn't answer. I picked up the termination letter, read the first line just for show, then set it down neatly. My name, my job title, my service years, all summed up in a bullet point list. The final line. Severance, 2 weeks. Effective immediately. "Your replacement's already waiting in the break room," he said, adjusting his cufflink. "Fresh out of training. Half your salary." It would have hurt, if I hadn't seen it coming. What stung was the disrespect. The erasure. Not even a handshake. I placed my badge, keys, fuel card, and company phone on his desk. One by one. Calm. Controlled. Then I looked him dead in the eye. "You think I'm a cost center, Hammond? I'm the reason half our clients are still on your books. I'm the reason Phoenix stayed after the Henderson fire. I'm the one who got Western their emergency shipment on Christmas Eve. You've got no idea what you just threw away. Still, he said nothing. Just tapped at his tablet again. My existence, reduced to another cell in his spreadsheet. I walked out into the morning chill, blinking against the early sunlight. The yard was quiet, except for the sound of a forklift whining in the back. My pickup truck waited where I left it, engine ticking softly as it cooled. I sat behind the wheel and stared at the building, at the company I helped build, now run by strangers. 15 years. Gone in 15 minutes. I didn't start the engine right away. Just sat. Thought about the dozens of clients who had my personal number. The ones I'd helped move house. The ones I'd driven through hell for because I knew it mattered. I pulled out my phone. 5 missed texts. The first was from Howard Fields. Just heard. What the hell's going on over there? Call me. The second, from Maria at Lakeland. Tell me it's not true. I'm furious. The third. If you're thinking of leaving town, don't. Let's talk. Gerald Knox. I let the screen dim. Closed my eyes. Took a breath. They could fire the driver. But they just cut loose something they couldn't replace. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger would come later. With clarity. With purpose. Right then, I wasn't plotting revenge. I was remembering. Gordon Jenkins once told me, the freight business isn't about diesel. It's about trust. I'd built that trust 1 mile at a time. 1 late-night delivery. 1 busted transmission fixed roadside. 1 favor called in for a friend with a flooded dock. Bryce didn't understand that. Maybe he never would. But I did. And that's what made me dangerous. Not because I drove better. Because I remembered what he forgot. And now, he was going to learn the hard way what loyalty, once burned, can really do. I didn't drive home right away. The truck idled in the parking lot of Sterling Arrow for a full 3 hours, engine clicking as it cooled, my fingers resting idle on the wheel. I wasn't staring at anything in particular. Not the main office I helped rebuild after the hailstorm in 2012. Not the warehouse where I'd once slept on a stack of pallets during a blizzard to make sure a shipment went out on time. I was staring through all of it, watching a whole career sink beneath the glassy surface of betrayal. My phone vibrated again. It hadn't stopped since I left the office. Text after text, voicemail after voicemail, some short and shocked, others long and furious. Names I'd come to know better than some of my own family. Howard Fields was the first. CEO of Phoenix Farms. I'd hauled their produce through ice storms, droughts, and once a collapsed bridge. Just heard. What the hell's going on over there? Call me ASAP. Then Maria DeVries, from Lakeland Logistics. She didn't even write words at first, just a string of fire and angry face emojis, followed by. Tell me this is a mistake. Bryce said you walked. That you were sabotaging contracts. Mitchell, what the hell is going on? And then Gerald Knox, Western Distributing. Calm and clear, as always. We need to talk. Something's off. I heard you resigned. Doesn't sound like you. I stared at that one the longest. Resigned. Resigned? I hadn't signed anything except a termination slip. No resignation letter, no exit statement. Just a quiet goodbye to a company I gave half my life to. I called Gerald first. He picked up on the second ring. Mitchell? Yeah. There was a pause. I heard the clink of ice in a glass. They're saying you left on your own terms. Something about, resisting new protocols. Disrupting the onboarding process. I don't buy it, but Maria's pissed. Howard too. My jaw tightened. I didn't resign, Gerald. I got canned. No warning, no meeting. Just a letter on the desk and a rookie warming my seat. Jesus Christ. Bryce? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. They're spinning it, Gerald muttered. Trying to cover their ass. You sure you're okay? I looked out at the building, watched a rookie driver back one of our newer rigs into a dock like he was parallel parking a yacht. Took him 3 tries. He was smiling. He didn't know. Not yet, I said. But I will be. That night, I met up with Frank Delgado at the Truckhouse Bar just off Interstate 64. If you've driven in or out of Lexington, you've seen it, neon sign half burned out, music always too loud, walls covered in black and white photos of rigs from another century. Frank was already at the booth when I walked in, a Miller Lite sweating on the table and a pack of cigarettes he didn't smoke anymore sitting beside it. You look like hell, he said. I feel worse. He waved over the bartender and got me a coffee. Black, no sugar. He knew me too well. Frank and I went back years. He was the only one who could handle the Kansas City detour during the 2016 ice storm besides me. He left Sterling last fall after Bryce accused him of damaging a company rig on purpose just to get new tires. A lie, of course. But it gave Bryce an excuse to bring in someone cheaper. We talked for a while. About Jenkins. About the old days. About what the hell had happened. He's cleaning house, Mitch, Frank said, leaning in. It's not just you. Last week he pulled Cindy from dispatch into a meeting. Next day she was gone. No goodbyes, no notice. Just a damn email from HR. You think it's a purge? Frank's eyes darkened. Worse. It's a sale. That's when I noticed them. 2 guys in polo shirts and slacks, sitting at the bar but speaking low. One of them had a company lanyard tucked under his collar. Not Sterling. Central Hauling, if my eyes weren't playing tricks. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. But one of them leaned closer, voice sharp even through the noise. Phase 3 starts next week. Central closes on Phoenix by Friday. Then we squeeze Western on rates, make it look like the old man tanked the client relationships. What about PR? Already in motion. Bryce wants Mitchell painted as unstable. Internal leaks. Policy sabotage. He's got a contact drafting a statement for the industry blogs. Jesus. And Phoenix buys it. Already halfway there. They just need a reason. I felt my stomach turn cold. They were building a narrative, one where I was the villain. Bryce was selling off the client list to his own front company, Central Hauling, and burying me under the wreckage to cover the tracks. A slow burn setup. A smoke screen with my name on it. I didn't speak. I didn't stand. I just looked at Frank, and he looked at me, and I knew he heard every damn word. They're going to blame you, he said quietly. Frame the whole fallout like it was your fault. Then flip the client base for profit. I nodded. Bryce wasn't just incompetent. He wasn't just a corporate parasite. He was a calculating son of a bitch. He didn't care who he ruined, as long as the numbers looked good on a quarterly report. I finished my coffee in silence. Then I leaned forward and said the words that would mark the start of something very different. They want to frame me. Frank raised an eyebrow. They're about to learn what happens when you corner the wrong man. The second I got home, I grabbed a legal pad, poured myself a cup of coffee, black, bitter, no time for sweetness, and started writing. Names. Numbers. Routes. Equipment. Clients. Trust. I wasn't just thinking about revenge anymore. I was thinking about survival, for me, for the people Bryce was planning to toss aside, and for the clients who didn't know they were being fed into a machine. The framework of a plan started forming, rough, skeletal, but alive. I needed allies. Real ones. People who remembered what this business was before the spreadsheets took over. So I called the only man who'd built something real in this business, Gordon Jenkins. He picked up after one ring. "Mitchell," he rasped. Still had that gravel road voice. "I need to talk to you. Now." 10 minutes later, we were both sitting on the back porch of his farmhouse outside of Nicholasville, two old folding chairs creaking under the weight of history. He had a flannel shirt over a faded Sterling Aero freight tee, the original logo still visible under years of sun and sweat. "I already heard," he said before I even started. "Bryce fired you." "Worse. He's spinning it like I quit. And he's feeding clients to Central Hauling, his own shell company." Gordon didn't look surprised. Just sad. "Son of a bitch," he muttered. "I never should have sold." "You didn't know." "Oh, I did," he said. "Maybe not the details. But I knew what kind of man Bryce was the first time I shook his hand. Cold fingers. No calluses." He leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees. "They're leaving Lexington," I told him. "Relocating everything to Kansas City for tax breaks." That got a reaction. His jaw tightened. He spat into the dirt like the words tasted rotten. Patricia saw the documents. 62 jobs on the chopping block. 62 families, he said quietly. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I asked the question that had been clawing at me since the bar. "What if we started over?" He blinked. "We." "Me. Frank. You. Maybe Patricia. Maybe a few more good people. Start something lean. Focused. Real. The way Sterling used to be." He didn't speak for a long time. Then he stood, disappeared into the house. When he came back, he was holding a dusty lockbox. He opened it slowly, like it was a relic. Inside, a checkbook, a few old ledgers, a photo of the first 3 rigs we ever owned. He handed me the checkbook. "I've got 200 grand saved. Was gonna buy a boat. Looks like we're building something instead." That night, Frank came over with 2 things, a 6-pack and a spreadsheet. We sat at my kitchen table until the clock passed midnight, hashing out numbers, tracing routes on an old state map I'd pinned to the wall. We weren't dreaming. We were building. I'd put my house on the line. Appraisal said it was worth just shy of $180,000. Frank liquidated his retirement plan, painful, but he didn't hesitate. We needed startup capital, and we weren't going to beg for it. By the end of the week, Grant, Delgado and Jenkins Freight was registered, licensed, and had a tax ID. Next step, gear. We found 5 used trucks, 2 Peterbilts, 2 Kenworths, and a Freightliner that had seen better days but still ran like a champ. Each had its quirks, its creaks, its stubborn gears. But they were ours. And we treated them like living things, oiled, polished, refitted with care. For a hub, we rented an abandoned lot on the edge of town, Ironwood Lot, once a bustling warehouse during the rail boom, now half swallowed by weeds and graffiti. But it had bones. And loading bays. We power washed the concrete, scrubbed off the rust, rewired the office trailer. Patricia showed up on day 2 with a thermos of coffee and a stack of invoices from her own filing cabinet. "I don't know what your payroll's like," she said, "but I'm done working for liars." We hired her on the spot. First official employee. The next few days were a blur of action. No time to dwell. We painted the trucks navy blue, our own color, distinct from Sterling's dull gray. We added silver striping by hand. One night Frank and I stood in the yard, watching the paint dry by flashlight. "They're ugly as sin," he said. "But they're honest," I replied. That became our motto. We weren't fancy. We didn't have flashy brochures or AI-powered route software or a logistics innovation team. But we had something else, experience, grit, and people who gave a damn. I started calling the old crew. Quietly. One by one. A mechanic named Troy, who quit after Bryce cut preventive maintenance hours. A dispatcher Jenny, who once worked 16 straight hours rerouting loads during the tornado scare in Louisville. 2 drivers who'd been training rookies for years, only to be sidelined for cheaper hires. I didn't make promises. I didn't offer big paychecks. I said one thing: I'm building something that respects the work. Want in? Most of them didn't hesitate. Late one night, while I was fixing a loose taillight in Bay 3, Patricia walked over with a folder. Client list, she said. Sterling's regulars. Prioritized by loyalty. I opened it. Phoenix Farms. Lakeland. Western. All near the top. My name was written next to more than half of them under a column labeled, Preferred Driver. Bryce might have taken my title. But he hadn't taken my reputation. That was something he couldn't buy, steal, or fake. That was mine. And it was about to become the weapon that brought him down. We launched quietly. No ribbon cutting, no grand announcement. Just 5 blue rigs pulling out of the Ironwood lot at dawn, engines low and steady, as if they knew the weight of what we were about to do. Grant, Delgado and Jenkins freight was officially in motion. No slogans. No discounts. Just the promise of doing things the right way, with respect, reliability, and the kind of honesty spreadsheets can't quantify. I didn't cold call. I didn't beg. I visited clients one by one, face to face, old school. No one else in this business carried handwritten logs and knew every dock manager's daughter's name. First stop was Howard Fields at Phoenix Farms. I showed him our rate sheet, competitive but not desperate, and a 3-tier delivery schedule tailored to their crop's timing needs. I didn't mention Sterling or Bryce once. He flipped through the pages, sipped his coffee, and looked me dead in the eye. You're not trying to undercut him. Nope. Why? Because I'm not here to play games, Howard. I'm here to rebuild trust. Not exploit it. He nodded once. That was all I needed. Word started spreading. Western Distributing scheduled a meeting the next week. Then Lakeland. Then 2 of our mid-size clients from Indiana. I wasn't promising miracles. I was offering competence, and a long memory. The kind that shows up at 2 a.m. during an emergency shipment, no questions asked. But Bryce noticed. And he did what snakes do when you shine a light on them. 3 days later, I got a thick envelope by certified mail. Inside, a cease and desist letter signed by Sterling Aero's legal counsel. Claim, unlawful interference with existing business relationships. Translation, stop talking to clients we mistreated and neglected, or we'll sue you into the dirt. That would have been laughable if not for what came next. 2 days after that, another envelope. This one wasn't from Sterling. It was from a shell company called Ascent Logistics, LLC, a subsidiary of Central Hauling, though you had to read 3 layers deep into the paperwork to see the connection. They were filing a trademark dispute. Claim, Grant, Delgado and Jenkins Freight, was confusingly similar to their own registered name, Delgado Transport Solutions. We both knew it was crap. They were trying to choke us with paper. No truck had ever run under Delgado Transport Solutions. It was a paper entity, probably registered in some backroom 6 weeks ago just to throw this punch. Bryce was behind it. I'd bet my last drop of diesel. But I wasn't about to flinch. I met with our lawyer, a woman named Shauna Reeves, recommended by Jenkins. She'd been a corporate contract killer in another life, left that world to raise goats and sue people who deserved it. I handed her a USB drive. "What's this?" she asked. "Insurance," I said. On it were the recordings from the Truckhouse bar, Bryce's little mouthpieces whispering about Phase 3, Central Hauling, and the smear campaign against me. I'd cleaned the audio, time-stamped it, added transcriptions. Then I gave her something else, a folder Patricia had risked her job to give me, full of emails, internal memos, and a draft PR release they'd planned to leak if their buyout failed. They were building the narrative, I said. They just didn't think I'd survive long enough to intercept it. Shauna smiled. You're going to cost them more in court than you ever did on payroll. Good. I didn't stop there. We issued a press release of our own, simple, direct. It didn't name names, but it outlined our company's founding values: integrity, worker-owned ethics, and transparency in client relations. We included the phrase, founded in the aftermath of mismanagement and the quiet collapse of trust. It didn't need to say, Sterling. Everyone knew. Then came the lucky break I didn't expect. A young man named Evan Rivers walked onto the lot one morning, resume in hand, shirt a little too clean for a diesel yard. He introduced himself and said, I want to drive. And I want to do it here. Frank was skeptical. You ever pulled a reefer unit through a thunderstorm at midnight? No, sir, Evan admitted. But I can learn. And I've waited a long time to be taken seriously. He handed me his application. His last name rang a bell. Your dad wouldn't happen to be Marcus Rivers, would he? He nodded. He used to work at Sterling. Maintenance lead. Got fired 5 years ago. I remembered. Marcus had 20 years under his belt. Bryce fired him for vision impairment. He had a minor muscle issue in one eye. Nothing that affected his ability to work, but Bryce needed the slot cleared for a younger, cheaper hire. Why now? I asked. Evan straightened. Because I want to drive for someone who respects the road. We hired him. No regrets. A week later, Evan ran his first emergency load during a flash flood in southern Indiana. Roads were washed out. Alternate routes were blocked. GPS was useless. But Evan made it. He navigated by instinct and paper maps, kept the freight cold and intact, and arrived 6 hours early. The client? Calhoun Medical Supply. They sent a letter the next day. Your driver saved over $300,000 in product. We want a standing contract. Effective immediately. That letter circulated. And just like that, the phone started ringing. Meanwhile, Bryce wasn't handling it well. We heard from contacts that he was slashing rates to keep clients, cutting corners on insurance, pressuring dispatch to push illegal service hours. Patricia got a text from a former coworker at Sterling. 2 trucks broke down this week. Maintenance delay. Driver turnover's a mess. They were imploding. Not because we stole anything. But because they built their kingdom on quicksand. And now. We were laying concrete. I was under a truck when the call came in, laying flat on my back in Bay 2, tightening a brake line on one of the Kenworths that had been stubborn about cold starts. Patricia leaned into the garage, phone in hand, her voice tense. Mitchell. It's Howard. Urgent. I slid out, wiped the grease from my palms, and took the call. Howard. I answered. Everything all right? Not even close, he said, and I could hear the panic buried under that familiar gruffness. Our shipment of packaging equipment stranded near St. Louis. The carrier bailed. Gas prices surged again and they just dropped us. No notice. I stood up straighter. What kind of shipment? 6 pallets of thermal packaging units for the new fruit line. If we don't get them by sunrise, we lose production on a $1.2 million run. I already had my keys in hand. Where's the truck now? Rest stop outside Rolla. Driver's not moving. I tried to get someone else, but no one will touch it. Snow's coming in. Everyone's pulling back. I looked out the window. The sky over Lexington was already bruised, low-hanging clouds stirring with malice. I'll go, I said. Mitchell, are you sure? I've driven through worse for less, I told him. Send me the coordinates. I ended the call and turned to Frank, who just stepped out of the office. Get the Peterbilt ready, I said. She's going west. We were rolling within 30 minutes. Frank helped load the rig with emergency supplies, tire chains, thermals, extra diesel, backup batteries. Evan handed me 2 flasks of hot coffee and a grim nod. You're a damn lunatic, he muttered. But you're our lunatic. The old Peterbilt groaned like it knew what was coming. But it started on the first turn, rumbling to life like an old warhorse smelling the battlefield again. The snow started halfway through Indiana. By the time I hit Effingham, it was blinding. Visibility down to 20 feet. High winds scraping the asphalt like knives. The wipers groaned under the ice. I kept going. I'd driven in worse, sure, but never under this kind of pressure. Never with a company's future hanging on whether or not I beat the clock. By midnight, I reached the rest stop outside Rolla, Missouri. The stranded truck was still there, driver gone, trailer unlocked. I backed up slow, careful in the snow, connected to the rig like it was muscle memory. I rechecked every latch, every cable, every pin. Then I turned east and rolled out, with 600 miles of frozen highway between me and a ticking production line. It wasn't just the weather trying to stop me. Somewhere around Louisville, a semi had jackknifed and blocked the interstate. Detour signs were buried under drifts. I lost cell reception 3 times and had to navigate by memory and an old Rand McNally atlas I kept under the seat for situations exactly like this. My hands were raw from cold. My eyes bloodshot. My whole body running on caffeine and spite. But I kept pushing. Gear by gear. Town by town. At 4:47 a.m., headlights broke through the darkness ahead, the loading dock at Phoenix Farms, lit up like a runway. I'd made it. 9 hours and 52 minutes. The dock crew was waiting, half-dressed, half-awake, but ready. Howard Fields himself came out in a coat over his pajamas, eyes wide with disbelief and something like reverence. You actually made it, he said, stepping up to the cab. I climbed down, legs stiff, jaw numb. Didn't think I'd turn back now. He took a long breath, then reached out and shook my hand. No contract. No paperwork. You've got us, Mitchell. All of us. From now on, it's you. I didn't get to sleep that morning. Because just hours later, my phone buzzed with a different kind of alert. Sterling Aero and Central Hauling were holding a joint press conference. Live streamed. Polished. Scripted to the syllable. Bryce stood at a podium, smug in a tailored charcoal suit, grinning like he hadn't spent the last 2 months lighting his company on fire. Next to him was a representative from Central, introducing their new strategic alliance, meant to strengthen logistics infrastructure across the Midwest. But Bryce made a mistake. He forgot the cameras were live when the host referred to him as a managing partner in Central's board consortium. He flinched. Briefly. Subtly. But enough. Within minutes, clients were circulating screenshots. Bryce Hammond, claiming to act in Sterling's best interest, was also profiting off the company buying out their contracts. The mask had finally slipped. By sunset, the dominoes started falling. Western Distributing was first. Gerald Knox sent a formal termination letter to Sterling and CC'd me, with a single sentence. We prefer loyalty over leverage. Lakeland followed by noon. Then came a wave, a mid-sized meat distributor in Kansas City, a beverage company out of Cincinnati, 2 international produce importers who'd once sworn they'd never switch providers. And 12 smaller vendors. All gone from Sterling's books by Friday. Patricia brought the updated market analysis into the office and laid it on the desk in front of me and Frank. Sterling just lost 46% of their active contracts this week, she said. Frank let out a low whistle. That's not a hit. That's a hemorrhage. I didn't celebrate. I just stood there, staring at the names on the list, companies I'd driven for, fixed equipment for, missed birthdays and anniversaries to serve. They weren't just numbers. They were people who remembered the sound of my truck's engine pulling into their docks at all hours of the night. Bryce had always believed this industry ran on profit margins and performance metrics. But it runs on people. On trust. On the unspoken contract between driver and dock, between dispatcher and client, between one hand and another across the cab window. He'd tried to cut that out of the equation. Now he was learning what happens when you kill the heart of a business. 2 days later, I got a voicemail. Unknown number. Male voice. You think this is over, Grant? You think one snowstorm and some crying farmers are gonna bring me down? I built that company into what it is. You're a relic. A walking eulogy. Watch yourself. I didn't save it. Didn't need to. Because that voice told me one thing louder than the words. Bryce Hammond was scared. He should be. I wasn't done yet. 6 months. That's how long it took. 6 months from the moment Bryce handed me a pre-printed termination slip, to the day I stood in a quiet auction yard on the east end of Lexington, watching a Sterling Arrow trailer being rolled onto a flatbed with a big red sticker that said Asset Foreclosure, Lot 17. Sterling Arrow Freight, once a name I wore across my chest with pride, no longer existed. It had been officially declared bankrupt 3 weeks prior, its assets sold off piece by piece to whoever would take them. Trucks, terminals, contracts, computers, liquidated like scrap at a garage sale. No press release. No farewell. Just silence. Even the website was gone. When you typed in their domain, it led to a broken link. But I didn't go to the auction for the spectacle. I went for one truck. Unit number 0049. My first rig. The one Jenkins handed me on day one, 15 years ago, a beat-up Peterbilt that rumbled like an old diesel dragon but never let me down. They'd retired it 2 years before, shoved it into the far corner of the yard, let it rust and rot like a forgotten relic. She was still there. Still mine. I bought her back for $8,000. Towed her to our lot with Evan driving the lead truck and Frank trailing. Took a team of 3 mechanics and 2 weeks of sweat to bring her back to life. New bearings, new lines, new coat of steel blue paint. I named her Truth in Steel. Not for nostalgia. Not for sentiment. For a promise. Because when the world tried to erase who I was, what I'd done, that truck still carried my fingerprint in every bolt. By then, Grant, Delgado and Jenkins Freight had grown faster than we imagined. We had 18 trucks, most of them bought used and rebuilt from the frame up. 48 employees, nearly 60% from the old Sterling crew, each one handpicked not for their resume, but for their resilience. Some of them cried the day they put on our new navy blue jackets. Not because they got a job, but because they were seen. Respected. Called by name again. We ran routes across 7 states now. Overnight hauls, refrigerated loads, specialty freight. Our on-time delivery rate was 99.6%. Clients didn't just stay, they referred. Not because we were the cheapest. Because we were the most trusted. As for Bryce Hammond, he vanished from Lexington not long after the client exodus. Rumor was he tried to spin the collapse, blamed internal sabotage, floated buzzwords like labor noncompliance and transition inefficiencies. None of it stuck. 3 months after the Sterling collapse, Central Hauling's board quietly removed him, citing ethical violations and a lack of fiduciary transparency. Translation: he lied, skimmed, and schemed one time too many. A journalist from the Courier tried to write a story connecting the dots between Bryce, Central, and the shell companies used to funnel contract transfers. But the story fizzled, too many shell corporations, too many vanishing records. Still, those who mattered knew. And that was enough. I never celebrated. Not once. There was no toast. No victory lap. No smug smile in the mirror. Instead, most mornings, I sat in a folding chair outside the Ironwood lot, a cup of coffee in one hand, watching the sun rise behind rows of navy blue trucks waiting to roll. That's where Jenkins found me one morning, cane in hand, coffee in the other. The old man walked slower these days, but he still made his rounds every week, still nodded at every driver like they were family. He stood beside me, looked out at the lot, and said, "You rebuilt it, Mitchell. Not the company. The soul." I didn't respond. Didn't need to. He sipped his coffee, then added, "You know, when Sterling died, they didn't even call me. Didn't even send a letter. You think a name can live forever, but without people like you, it's just ink on paper." I looked at him, at the worn face that had once sat across from me in a diner booth, teaching me how to chain up in a blizzard or talk a pissed-off dock manager down from a cancellation. "You rebuilt it from the ashes," he said. "But this time, it's your fire." Later that week, I took Truth in Steel out for a ride. No haul. No pressure. Just the open road and the sound of a familiar engine under my hands. I passed the old Sterling lot on the way. The gates were locked. The sign was gone. Grass had started to grow through the cracks in the pavement. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. Let them take your job. Let them smear your name. Let them erase you from the system. But if you hold the line, if you keep your word, keep your people, and never, ever bend where it matters, the truth will outlive them. Because in this world, reputation isn't something you say. It's something you haul, mile by mile, year after year. And one day, when the liars are broke and the snakes have eaten each other, you'll still be standing. Not in their shadow. But on your own ground. Built with your own hands. And your own fire. The best revenge? Build something they can never replace. And make them watch it thrive.